Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Nityananda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Vishpad Paramahans Parivrajacharyas Pedicus Systematis Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON's founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Shri Shri Gonitai Ki Grantharaj Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki Gopremanande. All glories to their assembled devotees, all glories to their assembled devotees, all glories to their assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityananda Namaste Saraswati Devi Kauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastimes Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakapatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So welcome everyone. Thank you very much for coming. And we are continuing on, and actually today we're concluding it's just a short seminar, Lessons from the Pastimes of Lord Nityananda. It's a big subject matter. We can go on for quite some time, but today is the last day. So there's a particular pastime I'm going to start with, and that is, it's from the 3rd chapter of the Antya Leela of Chaitanya Charitamrita. 3rd chapter of Antya Leela is the glories of Srila Haridas Thakur. So essentially it's about Haridas Thakur, but there's a very interesting and I would say very important pastime of Lord Nityananda's there, which we'll go through right now. In that chapter, the great devotee Haridas Thakur, there's an attempt to sort of undermine him or compromise his position, defame him, made by one prominent person of that time in the local community named Ramachandra Khan. Those of you who've read Chaitanya Charitamrita, you would have heard of Ramachandra Khan, kind of aggressive type of person and very caste conscious and bodily conscious. So he arranged to send a prostitute to Haridas Thakur. I imagine most or maybe all of you are familiar with that. And he had the police hiding so that when, something happened, as he assumed would happen, the police would jump out and arrest Haridas Thakur. And Haridas Thakur's reputation would have been, if that's what really happened, it would have been finished. But of course Haridas Thakur was not taken advantage of like that, and rather he made that prostitute into a devotee. Like I say, I assume you're familiar with the story, and she became a great devotee. So, as the chapter goes on, there's a little further discussion on the basis of that attempt of Ramachandra Khan's, very offensive against Srila Haridas Thakur, great devotee. So Srila Prabhupada, in the little introductory notes, at the beginning of some of those chapters in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada introduces what's going to be discussed. So Prabhupada says there, because of offending a pure Vaishnav, Ramachandra Khan was later cursed by Nityananda Prabhu and ruined. So maybe you're familiar with the story. Anyway, let's go through it. That sometime not so long after that whole incident with Haridas Thakur, the prostitute, actually probably was quite some time, it was some time after, yeah. So Lord Nityananda was traveling and preaching all over, and with a whole group of devotees, just a whole, like dozens and dozens and maybe even hundreds, whole entourage preaching all around Bengal and different places. And he came to the village where that Ramachandra Khan was staying. And Ramachandra Khan was a very wealthy man, very prominent man, and the sort of person that when you visit a town and you need like a devotee, a Vaishnav town, and you need a place to stay, and you ask, where can we stay? They say, oh, go to his place, because he's got a big house, and, like that, he's a prominent devotee. So Lord Nityananda went with his great entourage to that person's place, Ramachandra Khan's place, and they arrived, and that Ramachandra Khan, in the front of his house, there was what they call a Durga Mandap. It's basically a courtyard with deities of Durga on one side. And so they were there, and Lord Nityananda was there, and they were hoping to stay and use that courtyard to stay overnight. And Ramachandra Khan was inside. The house was a bit to the back behind that courtyard. So Chaitanya Charitamrita describes that when the Durga Mandap and courtyard became filled with crowds of men, Ramachandra Khan, who was inside the house, sent his servant to Lord Nityananda. The servant informed Lord Nityananda, my dear sir, Ramachandra Khan has sent me to accommodate you in some common man's house. So the attitude, he didn't even come out himself. And Lord Nityananda is such a prominent, famous preacher, actually. This is actually after Lord Nityananda had returned from Puri on Lord Chaitanya's order to continue the preaching and develop the Namahata movement. So this Ramachandra Khan, he was offensive, and he didn't come out to greet Lord Nityananda. And he said, sent his servant who said that he sent me to accommodate you in some common man's house. You might go to the house of a milkman, for the cowshed is spacious, whereas the space here in the Durga Mandap is insufficient because you have many followers with you. When Nityananda Prabhu heard this order from the servant of Ramachandra Khan, he became very angry and came out. Laughing very loudly, he spoke as follows: Ramachandra Khan has spoken rightly. This place is unfit for me. It is fit for cow-killing meat eaters. Oh yes. So he's extremely upset. So then, having said that, Lord Nityananda just stood out, just walked out. Of course, all the devotees followed him. And just to make the point that he just really didn't appreciate his treatment, he didn't even stay overnight in that village. They just went on to the next village. So, this is unbelievable, actually. Listen to this. Maybe you should fasten your seatbelts, make sure you're sitting down, because this is pretty amazing. Ramachandra Khan ordered the servant to dig up the dirt in the place where Nityananda Prabhu had sat. To purify the Durga Mandap temple in the courtyard, Ramachandra Khan sprinkled and smeared it with water mixed with cow dung. Just see the attitude. It's craziness, actually. It's just madness. Yes, so anyway, what happened? We read what Prabhupada said in the little introduction to the chapter. And Prabhupada said that Lord Nityananda, because Lord Nityananda cursed him, Ramachandra Khan was ruined. You know, Lord Nityananda, at least it's not stated that he cursed him in just the very literal sense. I curse you to become something, like with Maharaj Parikshit, with Shringi. It's a very specific curse. Something's going to happen to you. So at least nothing is stated here. Maybe he did say something like that, but at least he was deeply offended and angry. And I'm sure his followers were too. So, Ramachandra Khan, what happened to him? Just the next couple of days or so, he was a businessman, wheeler dealer, and almost any time you meet a businessman, you must know he's probably not that honest. Not uncommon at least. So he got in trouble with the Muslim government. And Chaitanya Charitamrita says, the Muslim minister of finance was angry and came to Ramachandra Khan's residence. The Muslim minister made his residence in the Durga Mandap of Ramachandra Khan. He killed a cow and cooked the meat at that very place. He arrested Ramachandra Khan along with his wife and sons, and then he continuously plundered the house and village for 3 days. In that very room, means that temple room, Durga temple, In that very room, he cooked the flesh of a cow for 3 consecutive days. Then the next day he left, accompanied by his followers. The Muslim minister took away Ramachandra Khan's position, wealth, and followers. For many days, the village remained deserted. So it wasn't just Ramachandra Khan. It was the other people. The whole village was affected. So the last verse, which is specifically addressing this in this chapter, it says, wherever an advanced devotee is insulted, for one man's fault, the entire town or place is afflicted. And here, of course, we're not just talking about the pastimes, but we're talking about the lessons we can learn from the pastimes. And here, there's a big lesson, a really big lesson, which is relevant, I would say, to all of us. That, as the verse says, wherever an advanced devotee is insulted, for one man's fault the entire town or place is afflicted. So the thing is this, devotees, it's a principle, and the principle is, like you may have heard, there's like a Vedic saying type of idea that it takes a village to raise a child. You heard that? Yeah, it takes a village. So the implication, at least the first part of the implication of that, is that everyone in the village has responsibility. Yeah, they have, not just like it's nice, you know what it's like to play with the children and joke with the children, but actually all the members of the community, they have a responsibility to help bring up the child in this case. Or we can apply it, like we can apply it in a devotee community, in a temple community environment, that all the members of the temple, all the members of the community, they have at least some responsibility in regards to everything which happens in the temple or in the community, like here in Mayapur also. It's a very big community, but still the principle's there. It may be more evident or obvious in smaller communities where there's less people, and if things start going wrong, it may be easier to see. But we all have, wherever we're staying, whatever community of devotees we're in, we all have a responsibility to the spirituality, the Krishna consciousness of the community. And if someone is going off track and getting into Maya or doing some nonsense, then of course it's easy to say, if you're doing everything basically, you're chanting your rounds and so on, then it's easy to say, oh, it's his problem. It's not my problem. Look at me, I'm doing 16 rounds a day, and so it's okay. I'm okay. He's not okay, but I'm okay. So, don't bother me. It's not my problem. But devotees, I'm sorry to say, it is your problem too. Of course, there are degrees of problem, of responsibility, but every member, as the verse says, wherever an advanced devotee is insulted for one man's fault, in this case, Ramachandra Khan, for his fault, the entire town or place is afflicted. And the whole place, the whole village was abandoned and just, ruined. So it's an important point. It's an important lesson to learn from this. And, there are other examples. For example, Maharaj Parikshit was cursed by Shringi, and it's explained there that because of that offense on the part of Shringi, the whole Brahmin community became affected. And the whole Brahmin community, not just in that village or that area, but the whole Brahmin community on planet Earth, it became deteriorated to some degree. And it was really like the process of deterioration of Kali Yuga. It began with that, and then it didn't stop. It just continued until we now, we have the situation nowadays where the caste Brahmins, at least some of them, are still proud of it, but not so many of them are really up to a proper standard. I can tell you a funny little story. It's a funny, sad little story that in Vrindavan, there is a taxi driver. I've been going to Vrindavan for almost 50 years now, regularly. And there's a taxi driver who I know personally. His name is, would you believe, Panditji. And I've known him for I don't know how long, at least 20 or 30 years. So Panditji, the first time he drove us from Vrindavan through Karoli and then out onto the main road and then onto Jaipur. So the first time, he said he's Panditji, and I said, really? I can sort of speak little broken Hindi, so I asked him, "Aap Brahmin hai?" And he pulled out his thread, which looked like he hadn't changed it for a good few years. And he said, yeah, look, I'm a Pandit. Okay, all right, let's go. So off we went to Karoli. Then from Karoli, there's a shortcut out to the main highway to a large town called Gangapur, which is not sort of halfway further on to Jaipur. So we're driving along. Panditji's at the wheel, I'm next to him. And we come to a fork in the road, not like a T-junction, but just it divides, and one part goes one way, another one goes off on a little bit of an angle. And there was a sign there with different arrows pointing to different towns. And, I can read Hindi and Sanskrit, so I'm looking at the sign, and it says, Gangapur is this way. And I said, Panditji, dekhiye, wah, Gangapur, waha. And Panditji's looking at the sign. And when you're Panditji, you shouldn't listen to an angrez, trying to tell you something. So he got out of the car and he spoke to one man who was walking past, and he asked him, which road, Konsa Rasta? And the man pointed, down that road. And he got in, and off we went. And I understood. What do you think I understood? I understood Panditji is illiterate. Yeah, he can't read Hindi. You know, it's not difficult to read at all. But he couldn't read, but he's still Panditji. Anyway, he's okay. I mean, he's not okay, but he's a Brijvasi. We have a sort of friendly relationship. So yeah, things like this are going on in the name of the caste system. Okay, so anyway, that's the lesson. That's the lesson. It's a really important lesson. I think it is not really emphasized so much, but there is definitely truth in it that each one of us, we do have a responsibility beyond just keeping ourselves together. It's achintya bheda bhe tattva, isn't it? One and different. We're part of a greater thing, but we're ourselves, we're individuals at the same time. So both things apply. And therefore, in our humble ways, we should try to make sure that we set good standards in our own activities, and we help with the general spiritual atmosphere and standard and Krishna consciousness like that. So there you go, devotees. Next thing I'll go into, and that particular story about Ramachandra Khan, I don't know how many of you had heard it before. It's kind of deep in Chaitanya Charitamrita in the Ancha Leela. But the next thing I want to go into is, it's actually a story from Chaitanya Bhagavat. And, it's a well-known story. Those of you who've read Chaitanya Bhagavat, you'd be familiar with it, but it's an amazing story. One of my favorites. And at the end of the story, there are two blessings given by Vrindavan Das Thakur at the end. But I thought, just to encourage you all to stay awake and so on, I could just tell you the blessings beforehand. And it might stimulate you if you're struggling. I mean, I know what it's like to struggle. So, okay, here we go, devotees. There are two verses, just one after the other. Ye shunaye Nityananda prabhura akhyana tahare maliba gora chandra bhagavan. One who hears these topics of Nityananda Prabhu will attain the lotus feet of Lord Gaurachandra. And the next one, this is actually, it's just the next verse. It's Chaitanya Bhagavat, Ancha Kanda, chapter 5, if you want to make a note of it. Chapter 5, verse 706. Dasyugana mochana yechita diashune Nityananda Chaitanya Dekibe Sejane. Anyone who with an attentive heart hears this pastime of the thieves' deliverance is assured to someday meet Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda face to face. Yeah, this is amazing, isn't it? Just like yesterday, we were in one small little corner somewhere else with a small group of devotees. But just one thing I'll tell you, which we read from Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's really nice. Vrindavan Das Thakur said that if the air, the air which has touched the body of Lord Nityananda touches you, then Krishna will accept you eternally. Haribol. Shri Nityananda Prabhu ki jai. All right. So the description begins. Please listen, devotees, to how Lord Nityananda delivered the most fallen. And, sometimes our ISKCON devotees, sometimes we talk about, I'm the most fallen, I'm very fallen, and that, it's nice. It's nice to think like that. But this fellow here is described as the most fallen. And to actually be the most fallen, now you've got to really try hard, actually. It's not easy to become the actual most fallen. No, you're talking about Hiranyakashipu level or something super extreme. So we can't claim to compete with Hiranyakashipu or this fellow. We are what, even though sometimes we may say, or we may even feel, oh, I'm the most fallen. But we're not really. We are just sort of normal fallen. Something like that. Sort of average fallen. Nothing special fallen. Really, just kind of regular fallen. So, that's bad enough, though. That's bad enough. So please listen, devotees, to how Lord Nityananda delivered the most fallen. So the thing is, I won't read through, I'll read a bit of it, but basically I'll just tell the story. That there in Navadvip, there was a Brahmin. This is not Jagai or Madai, they were Brahmins. There's no direct sort of comparison of Jagai and Madai with this fellow, but he was definitely very, very extreme. So it says, he had no peer among the thieves. He was the top thief. Yeah, no equal. His heart was filled with evil, and he was the commander of an army of thieves. There was no mercy in his body. So what happened was, this is after Lord Nityananda has returned from Puri. Because when Lord Chaitanya took sannyas, then it's a bit of a long story, but Lord Nityananda went with him to Puri and stayed with him for some time in Puri. But then Lord Nityananda, we discussed it yesterday, Lord Chaitanya ordered him to come back and preach. So he did. But Lord Nityananda, in so many ways, he was not your average preacher or your average anything at all. And, he's known, of course, as Avadhuta. Avadhuta includes just no real question of rules, regulations, formalities. So, of course, when you go out preaching, it's always a good idea when you're dealing with the ordinary people who just, they evaluate people on the surface. How do you look? Are you clean? Are you nice? Lord Nityananda, he was extreme. He would wear around his neck kilos of gold, kilos, and bangles, gold encrusted with gems, bangles all the way up to his shoulder, and ankle bells, all solid gold with emeralds, rubies, diamonds, and earrings, same sort of idea, probably worth today just millions and millions and millions of dollars, and very opulent clothes, effulgent, shiny silk clothes, and turban with gems, and really something very, very extraordinary. And he'd just go out in public like that. And, on Harinam, big kirtan, really big kirtan. And he's just flying with all these things, and unreal. So this man, traditionally in Indian English, kind of like a little older Indian English, they call this type of person a dacoit. A dacoit. It's quite a good word. It's, a dacoit. It's not used in English, but anyway, he was the chief of the dacoits. So he was out there one day with his army of thieves, and they saw Lord Nityananda. And they thought, this is it. We just got to rob him, and all of us, we can retire for the rest of our lives. So we just got to get him. How are we going to get him? So they found out that Lord Nityananda was staying with a devotee named Hiranya Pandit. So they made a plan that night they would gather just in the trees surrounding the place of Hiranya Pandit. Hiranya Pandit's house was kind of on the edge of town, not like right in the middle. So they met there that night, armed with swords, daggers, and tridents. And they went to that place where Lord Nityananda was staying. So Lord Nityananda was inside having kirtan, some devotees taking prasadam, and it was just a festival going on inside. So these thieves had to wait until everyone took rest. So time went on late into the night. They're sitting there waiting. And what happened was they all fell asleep mystically. They woke up the next morning. What happened? Oh, it's the morning. And I mean, there's sort of amusing little asides there in the story, like one says to the other, "You fell asleep." And the other one says back to him, "Oh, you stayed awake all night, did you?" Little things like that are thrown in. So off they went, and they decided that, we'll come back the next night. So they came back the next night. And same thing, it's late. They all gather amongst the trees surrounding the place. But this time they saw there were some guards there, like real guards. These men were like, sometimes I say, they were like real policemen. There are not so many in India. You get some, not so many. But in New York, you get real police. You get some real police. Really dangerous people. So these fellows were dressed up opulently, armed, 3 meters tall, 3 meters wide, all muscle, that sort of thing. And they're walking up and down on the 4 sides of the house. And they're walking from one end, they come in, they meet in the middle, and they salute, and they say, Haribo! And these thieves couldn't believe it. And they said, just one of these fellows can finish all of us. So we'll try some other time. So off they went again. These are like superhumans. So they came back a few nights later. And this time they thought, it's okay. There are no guards. There's no one around. Things are quiet. And full moon. And it's just, very calm and peaceful. And they thought, this is it. Goddess Chandi has blessed us. Kali Ma has blessed us. Bhadra Kali Ma. So, okay, right. They grabbed their weapons and they got ready to charge out and just attack the house. So now they're running across the sort of lawn area. Suddenly, they were all struck with blindness. They all became blind. Their minds became paralyzed. Their intelligence was unable to function. So they don't know where they're going. Some of them fell into a moat which was surrounding the house, and they were immediately attacked by leeches, insects, and giant mosquitoes. Have you met leeches before? Ooh, suck your blood. And giant mosquitoes. I remember when I first came to Mayapur, it was 1976. And in those days, in Mayapur, they had real mosquitoes. Now, they're just these little baby things. But in those days, there were mosquitoes, I swear they're this size. Almost as big as the mosquitoes in Siberia. If you want to meet a real mosquito, go to Siberia. You will not believe how aggressive they are. So some of them fell into this moat. Means it's like a ditch full of water, and they're attacked by these creatures. Some of them fell into a rubbish pit, and there, the scorpions, it says, the scorpions were unsparing and vicious. Some others, because they can't see where they're going, they walked straight into a bush of thorns. You have thorn trees here. In Africa, we have thorn trees, which are bigger. The thorns are bigger, like this size, and sharp, like a razor blade. Yeah. And hard, like iron. You can't break it. Yeah, so some of them ran into some thorn tree, and now these thorns are just tearing their bodies to pieces, and so they have to just stand there. They can't move. If they try to move, their bodies will get ripped up. So, yeah, others fell into a canal and broke their legs and hands. Many of them suddenly felt very feverish. They began to consider their plight. At that point, Lord Indra was watching. And Lord Indra, Chaitanya Bhagavat says, he understood they wanted to attack Lord Nityananda. And Lord Indra did not like that at all. So he sent, it had been a perfect night, full moon, clear sky. Suddenly, it was like devastation, total devastation. Rain just falling, like in the Govardhan Leela, falling like pillars of rain, hailstones, hailstones landing on your head. Anyway, it was a really serious storm. And they were plunged in an ocean of sufferings. One of the thieves became dizzy and fell down, forgetting who he was. He was filled with terror. So, yes, they were on the verge of death. So then the chief dacoit, the dacoit Brahmin, he got some realization somehow by the grace of Lord Nityananda. Because there was talk, not that everyone accepted it or believed it, but there was talk that this Nityananda, he's an avatar. He's someone really, really special. And the chief dacoit Brahmin, he had heard that. And then suddenly he thought, it must be true. This Nityananda must not be an ordinary mortal. He must be the Supreme Lord. First night he put us to sleep. There we were ready for action. Next thing, we're waking up in the morning. Second time, there are these superhuman sentries. Even then I didn't understand. And then tonight, from perfect conditions to just complete hell, he must be the Supreme Lord. So, I am so sinful, I wanted to steal from him. Who can save me except Lord Nityananda himself? So like this dacoit Brahmin started meditating on Lord Nityananda's lotus feet and really taking full shelter of him. So inside the house was Lord Nityananda and some devotees. They were having quiet kirtan. It wasn't a big, boisterous kirtan, just quietly having kirtan. Suddenly, this man bursts in and throws himself at the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, crying out, "Save me, save me! Father Nityananda, purifier of the fallen." He just threw himself at the lotus feet of the Lord. In my heart, I wanted to harm you. Therefore, what I will do now as a penance, I'll die. I'll go straight to the Ganges, throw myself in, drown in the Ganga. And Lord Nityananda told him, just wait a minute, hang on, relax. Lord Nityananda said, you listen, Brahman, if you commit no more sins, I'll accept all your karma. Give up violence, theft, and all misdeeds. Do them no more. Walk on the path of religion. Chant the holy names of Lord Krishna. Then you can deliver others. And he gave him a special program. Go and visit all the thieves and criminals, all the dacoits. Go and visit them and preach to them and make them into devotees. Then Lord Nityananda took the garland from his own neck and placed it around the neck of that dacoit Brahmin. So, that's what he did. He went, because he was a famous dacoit. Famous. Well known amongst all the criminals, the murderers, thieves in Bengal. So he took it up as his mission to go and preach to them. And that's what he did. He went door to door and he'd knock on the door because he knew where all these people lived. And they'd open the door and they'd see, it's him, the chief of the dacoits. And he would tell them, he preached to them, and they all became devotees. So they became a subgroup of Lord Nityananda's followers. Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya, they had groups, different groups amongst their followers. So these devotees, they became famous as the dacoit Vaishnavas. And their program was simple. It was kirtan. But not just your ordinary kirtan like it, Guru Puja or whatever. It was like really heavy kirtan. This boom, boom, boom kirtan. So the people would be there and suddenly they'd hear boom, 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 and the kirtan is coming. And the people would know, here come the dacoit Vaishnavas. Yeah. So there you go, devotees. It's interesting, there's so many lessons you could say. Don't be a dacoit. We have had, or we probably have, dacoit Vaishnavas. I know in Russia, we've definitely had. Gee whiz. I was staying in one town, way out in Siberia, in one devotee's house. And I asked him, he was there during the day, I asked him, oh, what do you do? He said, well, I deliver things. I said, really, you got no work today? He said, no, I work at night. In other words, transporting stolen goods around. And you may not believe this, but it's true. I stayed there 3 or 4 nights. And one night, he went out and he never came back. And the devotees, I mean, I've been back to that place many times. They never saw him again. So don't be a dacoit, Vaishnav, because you can get into big trouble. But, just an interesting point to consider. Just some food for thought, something you can think about, is that with Jagai and Madai, Lord Nityananda instructed them. Jagai, he became just one of the devotees, basically. But Madai, Lord Nityananda gave him a special program. He built it a gut, Madai gut. And Lord Nityananda told him, you just sit here all day, every day. And whoever comes, you just offer them your obeisances and say, if I ever offended you directly or indirectly, please forgive me. But the dacoit, Vaishnav and his dacoit friends, they were given a different program. It's interesting. Just something to think about. Yeah, something to think about. So there you go, devotees. There's some little narrations about Lord Nityananda. There's a lot more. We could have talked about the Panihati Chidadahi festival. Next time, maybe. There's so many other things. But please take Lord Nityananda into your hearts. I mean, he's in your hearts already. I know you're very sincere. And just pray for the mercy of Lord Nityananda. And pray to Lord Nityananda, please help me to become a proper servant of your Lord, Gauranga. And he'll fulfill your desire. He'll fulfill your desire. Hare Krishna. Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ke. Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ke. Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ke. Srila Prabhupada Ke. Go Premanande.